On today's episode of the WFL Weekly Recap, we'll break down the upset that proved some doubters right, take a look at the Irish game of the week, and preview what could be next week's biggest matchup. Welcome to the WFL Weekly Recap. All right, let's get into the upset of the week first of all. Upset of the week, Dallas undefeated this going into this week. New England shatters that. New England, the injured team, injured. Ernest Livingston still out until week 12, and they still pull it off without him. They're barely surviving. They're just ahead of their division, still on top of the division, but just barely ahead of Atlanta. And I think it was Sarajevo is the other one. I think it's just Atlanta and them. Either way, they are barely winning this division, and they go in and they defeat a team like Dallas. Xavier Custer for Dallas, running back, had an amazing game still. 31 points for the team. He had at least 2 touchdowns, from what I remember. So it's still an amazing game for Dallas, but New England just played better, even without the star quarterback. And that's mostly due to Gerard Surtain, wide receiver, traded from Tampa to them. Just an amazing player. He just went into this week and just scored. Not to leave out Jermaine Thornton, the quarterback, backup quarterback stepping in for Ernest Livingston, traded during the offseason from Seattle to New England to replace Ernest Livingston. But either way, those two lit up the field and they got the game winning field goal thanks to the kicker. I don't remember his name. I apologize to the kicker. But just an amazing game, an upset to be sure, undefeated team losing to a team without their starting quarterback. Usually you wouldn't think Earth Bowl second, Earth Bowl loser, still second best team in the league, usually wouldn't be the underdog going into this game, but they were because of that QB injury, and yet they still won the game. Overall, an amazing effort by New England, taking out Dallas this week and leaving Berlin as the last undefeated team. So speaking of amazing games, not only that, but we have our game of the week. This week's game of the week was, of course, St. Patrick's Day. A double overtime in the regular season. I don't think that's happened. I don't even remember the playoffs going to over double time. I don't even remember the playoffs going to double overtime yet. I don't even remember that happening, but it happens here in the regular season due to the Irish vote. So what happened was the game ended 24-24 regulation. So the game was tied. It went into overtime. And then Cork went down the field, scored a touchdown, missed the extra point. Dublin got the ball, marched down the field, scored a touchdown, and they also missed the extra point. And then overtime ended 30-30. A big game on St. Patrick's Day, a big rivalry game, and it ends in a tie. Nobody wanted that. There'd already been a tie this week, which I'll get to later. There'd already been a tie this week. They didn't want that to happen. The fans at the stadium cheered so much, and basically they got a second overtime. And so they played the second overtime. Cork got the ball first, kicked the game-winning field goal. Game ended right after that, and Cork wins for the 4th year in a row. They beat Dublin last year at Cork, and they also beat, I think it was Paris the year before that. And I don't remember who they beat the first year they did this, but so far they're on a 4-game win streak on St. Patrick's Day, and they've just dominated. Now, news for next St. Patrick's Day, it will be going to Dublin. So we're cementing this system of Dublin versus Cork is going to be just every St. Patrick's Day, same 2 teams. Just a yearly game. It's going to happen just because of the, St. Patrick's Day in Ireland. And then Dublin is going to rotate hosts. So Dublin's going to have it one year. Cork's going to have it the next year. This year, Cork had it. They had it last year too, but that's why the rotation is new. So yeah, it's an instant classic. It's one of the wildest games I've ever seen. And with that, we'll get into our third game that we're going to cover. And this is the fan game of the week. This was chosen by a fan. And going forward, every fan game of the week is going to be a vote. So I'll put a vote up, a poll on the YouTube, and you'll be able to vote on it. And you'll be able to choose the game of the week from the fans, the fan game of the week. So the fan game of the week is Memphis at Houston. Memphis just with a crazy season so far. Their first round pick is basically a bust. Who could have guessed it? Gene Blunderbust. But Houston coming into this game didn't look hot either. Not two teams that looked great. Houston, but they did have Christopher Livingston, Ernest's little brother. They did have Will Bowles. They still had somewhat of an offense. And compared to Memphis, who wasn't even starting some of their best players, nobody expected Memphis to take this home. And I think Houston was winning for a little bit there. They were winning, but Memphis led a late comeback to win the game 27-26. And it's just, you wouldn't expect it from Memphis. This was chosen by the fans, and a Memphis fan chose this. And just, Will Bowles had a great game, and Memphis just outplayed them at the very end. They just rallied at the end. I forget the quarterback's name, but it's not the one going into the season. He's been benched due to bad behavior. I can't even name it just because Memphis has had that chaotic of a season. It's been a mess. It's been basically awful if you're living in Memphis and you're trying to cheer for this team. But you get something out of it. You finally get a good game. It's not your first win, but it's definitely the first win to be proud of. Yeah, it was a dramatic comeback, and it's just fans loved it this week. Now, moving on to the rest of this week. First off, we started off on Friday with New Jerusalem versus Arusha, two teams that are hurting from last year. Arusha not doing as well, losing the division so far to Palermo. New Jerusalem, not the greatest in their division. I think they're second to last. They come into this game, beat Arusha 30-13. It was a breath of fresh air for New Jerusalem and a little bit troubling for Arusha. Then we have Madrid St. Catherine. I think this was the game that Madrid lost. This was their first loss. So going into that game, Dallas was the last one left. Madrid was also undefeated, but they got defeated here by St. Catherine, 16-6. St. Catherine beats Madrid, takes one more undefeated team off the list, and now there's only one left after this week. Jerusalem Atlanta. Atlanta gets a comfortable win, 23-7 against Jerusalem. Nothing to not shocking here. Jerusalem's not been amazing. They did have the division like last week, I think, and Atlanta's been in the division race, so it's a surprisingly competitive game, but Atlanta takes the win just like everyone would have expected. Seattle Sarajevo, another Seattle Sarajevo game. It was entertaining down to the end, 16-13. It's always a good game when these two play. No matter how good either of them are doing, they always find a way to just play good football. And then, of course, Wallerock, their biggest rivalry is the Tombstone Broncos. They face them this week, trying to come back from their drought since they won the first Earth Bowl. They got back, I think it was year four they got back, but they didn't win it, and they haven't won any since. They're looking to make a comeback, and they beat Tombstone 33-17 to just prove that they're back. They beat their old rival, and Wallerock just might be back. You have Malmo beating Nicosia 38-19. Nicosia may have been a bad fit to go in the PFC East, a historically competitive division, and Nicosia comes in, and they're not doing so great this season. They're not the worst team in the league. We'll get to them, but it's definitely not pretty so far this season. Next, basically what you could consider the best team in the league versus the worst team in the league. It's a toss-up between Arisdale and Helsinki, but Berlin destroys Arisdale 36-7. It wasn't even competitive. Berlin stays undefeated. Berlin surprised, they were in the playoff race last year. I don't think they made it, Warsaw just fell off a cliff this season, and we'll get to them too. And just Berlin stepped up. They're undefeated. This is a big shock. I don't know how Berlin is undefeated, but they've got a good offense. Kyler Payne is really helping out that team. Next, a Europe game. Zurich beats Helsinki 13-7. Pretty standard Europe result. It was a little close, but you could probably tell Zurich was going to win this one. Another shocking game. Kiev destroys Palermo 41-10. I didn't expect that. That's a crazy result to see this week. Palermo is leading their division still. This is a big upset too. Not as big as Dallas because Palermo had already been beaten. Kiev is already showing somewhat of a competent team, but Palermo losing like this is still pretty shocking. Uh, Warsaw and Los Angeles. It's not the most expected result here, but Los Angeles and Warsaw tie. Last season, I would have expected this. Los Angeles and Warsaw were on fire. This season, Los Angeles and Warsaw, they just haven't been the same. They're Los Angeles is doing better. Warsaw has been awful so far. So a tie here, it's just a little perplexing. Then we get San Francisco and Stockholm. This was a close race. Stockholm and San Francisco fighting for the top of the division. Stockholm beats San Francisco 34-23. Stockholm putting themselves out in front of the division right now. They look like the favorites to win it, just like everyone expected. San Francisco's been a surprise, though. You have New York and Oslo. New York putting their offense to work. I forget the quarterback's name. He was like the third person taken, but they win 33-13 against Oslo. Oslo's been okay. New York's been okay. New York finally showing some offensive work. Maybe this is a good sign. Lisbon beats New Jerusalem City 33-17. New Jerusalem City's not been that great recently. They had a playoff run 3 or 4 years ago. Not since then. New Jerusalem City's not been great. Lisbon was surprisingly bad last year. I think they had the first overall pick aside from the expansion teams. And now they take this win over New Jerusalem City. They look like they may be back, but they're kind of wibbly wobbly here. They like do really good one week, beat St. Catherine by a lot of points, lose in a shutout the next week. So Lisbon's kind of all over the place so far. You have Denver and Tampa, a good U.S. market game, 26-24. Denver beats Tampa. I didn't expect that. Denver at the bottom of the division still. They traded away a lot of stuff last year for picks, but they did surprisingly well this game. Tyrod Schnell, I think, is a quarterback. He had some weird comments at the start of the season. He's not too bad right now, so let's hope that continues for him. And Tampa, it was a good game, but you just didn't play as well. And finally, besides the three games we covered, Miami and Boise. Boise wins 31-27, putting themselves up a little in the division. Not bad, but it's a 33-27 result. Miami's been surprisingly good this season. I forget it was Schmidt something on the defense, their top pick. He's been really good so far. I'm sorry I forgot his name, but Boise just outplays Miami in this game, outlasts them, and that is all the results. Uh, Now I've been talking a lot about divisions. I've been talking a lot about scores and all that and standings. Here's the standings for everybody to see. In the WFC Global, Stockholm's out to a strong lead at 6-2. San Francisco's just behind them at 5-3. Jerusalem's just barely behind them at 5-4. New Jerusalem's behind them at 3-4-1. Not a great result there. And Springfield is 2-6. They're still trying to put some stuff together. In the WC Orbital, Dallas 7-1 took that loss, their first loss this season. Tombstone 5-3, surprisingly good so far. Houston 4-4, Wallerock 4-4. I don't know what's up with Wallerock. They beat Tombstone though, so that's a plus in the right direction. But they're looking like they may be back. I don't know, but we'll see. And Arisdale 0-8, not a good look for Arisdale. Some relocation rumors. They might be moving back to earth. They literally are falling down to earth here. Your negative 77 point differential. It's not great for Arisdale. But Dallas, even though they took a loss, still one of the top teams in this playoff race. Then we have the WFC West. Los Angeles, despite the tie, is 5-2-1, still staying strong. They're still ahead of Tampa, just barely. 5-3 for Tampa, 5-4 for Boise. So it's a close race in the West. Miami's just behind them at 3-5. They had their division for the first few weeks there. They don't anymore. Now they're tied with Denver. However, that negative 69 point differential for Denver puts them behind Miami with a -2. So Los Angeles, Tampa, Boise, expect to see at least two of these teams in the playoffs. Then you have Europe, Berlin, 8-0. So far, really good. They had their bye week already. It's week 9, going into week 10. I don't know I'll tell you who they're playing in a minute, but they're off to a strong start. Zurich, 4-4. Berlin's pretty much running away with this division. Oslo, 3-5. Warsaw, 1-6-1. It's an ugly result. That tie and 1 win, and then 6 losses. It's not good for them. And then Helsinki, 0-8. So they're there with Arisdale. They were bad last year. I don't know what Helsinki has to do. Maybe it started with them drafting a punter in the first round of their very first draft. That might have affected a few things. Then we have the PFC Central, as I was saying, New England staying on top of it, 5-2-1. Atlanta right behind them at 4-4. Seattle is the team right behind Atlanta at 4-5. And since Sarajevo is there 4-4 as well. And then Memphis 3-5. So Memphis may not win the division this year. Sarajevo, Seattle, and Atlanta might be fighting for one of those wild card spots. And maybe if Atlanta takes the division, maybe Seattle or Sarajevo could make a run. But right now, Crushers are surviving. They're crushing it. Then you have the PFC East, famously competitive division. Nicosia is not doing bad for the division they were slotted into, 3-5. Lisbon's 4-4, Malmo's 5-3, St. Catharines 6-2, and Madrid 7-1. Madrid was undefeated until this week, same as Dallas. Madrid, Dallas, Palermo, and Berlin were like the top teams this season. And, Dallas, Madrid still in there. Palermo's still hanging on. Berlin is just thriving still. St. Catherine and Madrid, that result puts Madrid down a bit. St. Catherine would have been a little bit further down in this race if they hadn't won. Vital result. Then you have the PFC North. Cork beating Dublin pushes them down in the division. Instead of being 5-3, Dublin is 4-4, behind New York at 5-4, Paris behind them at 3-5, New Jerusalem City at 2-7, and Cork at 6-3, including that win. That tie not happening helps Cork out tremendously. And finally, the last division we have, Palermo, Arusha, Kiev, Medina, and Lyon all in the PFC South. Palermo 6-2, not the worst result. That's the same as St. Catherine. So they're not Madrid or Dallas level anymore, but they're still up there with the top dogs or top wolves. Then Arusha 4-4, Kiev 3-5, Medina 3-5, Lyon 2-6. So Lyon's had a big fall. I think it was Connor James. I don't know what he'll do, but we'll see what his decision is during the offseason. Maybe he needs to go somewhere else. That's up to him. That's all we can know for now. But that's the standings. Your top teams are Palermo, Cork, Madrid, New England, Berlin, Los Angeles, Dallas, and Stockholm. That's your top teams right now. Stay tuned next week because there's some close races here. Next on the agenda here is the website. So for anyone looking in here, we have all these fan activities here. This one is not an activity. This is the holiday series, but then you got who's overrated, predict the upset, power rankings debate, rivalry heat meter, all these fun activities. Tells you how long you can do them. And now I'm going to read you some of the best ones from the past week because there's been some fun fan results in here. So let me highlight some of the best fan results we've gotten sent in. And if you want to go do these activities, I will try and get as many people as I can results on the show. So Some results here. WFL Wallerock put in a who's overrated. They said Dallas. So they're putting Dallas as the overrated team. Maybe they've been proven right. Maybe it's just divisional. Maybe it's just divisional stuff there. John Davis, Arisdale fan, says the best team is Arisdale. The best offense is. Oh, hold on. I can't see that. All right. Best offense is New England. Best defense is St. Catherine. It's a pretty good take there from John Davis. Sorry about your team not doing great this season. It says, yeah, so I forgot what I was saying. Sorry. But basically, that's John Davis's result. So next up, we have Sean McDonald Cork. They did the stock up, stock down result activity. They put up Cork, down Dublin. Very Irish result right now. I can't remember what this category is. It says Dublin. No, that just says down Dublin. Okay, so Sean McDonald puts in Cork up, Dublin down. I forgot to say the last result, John Davis, was build the power rankings. And finally, from WFL fan 123, we have New England is one ugly win away from becoming the scariest team in the league from our random hot take generator. So those are just some of the results here. You can see the who's overrated. You can see our build the power rankings, our stock up, stock down, hot take generator. We also have some rivalry heat meter. We have power rankings debate, predict the upset, or a few other activities. And you can check out our holiday series page there. Those are some fun activities. Submit your results if you want to be on the show. I will be doing this show weekly from the rest of the season. So if you want your results, your fan activity results here, just submit them. All you have to do, go in, let's do a hot take generator. Generate. If we're serious about expansion, the Macedon Elephants is the first team you call up. It's a random hot take. You can put in your name here, and you can send to WFL, and I will get the results, and I will be able to see it, and I will try and put as many as I can on the show. The earlier you do it, like if you do it next week, there probably isn't going to be a million people submitting or anything. So if you want to get on the show, next week's a great week to do it, and until keep doing it until the results pile up. But if you want to be on the show here, you can do these results. You can vote for the fan game of the week. And those are some fun ways to get involved here. And that's just on this show here. And then finally, for our activities here, we have a preview of next week's games. So first of all, the big Friday matchup, Eid Al-Fitr, is coming up, and the WFL on Friday is going to be celebrating it with Medina at home versus Arusha. So if you want to see that, tune in this Friday. Should be tomorrow from when I'm recording this. I'll probably post it today. So tomorrow, make sure to watch the game because it'll be up on the channel. It'll be at 6 a.m. Mountain Time. It's gonna be early for US fans. It's about a normal time for the Middle East, I assume. I don't know exactly, but I think that's how it works. So 6 a.m. Friday. Hopefully, I get this posted in time for you to see it. But other words, go check that game out. It's going to be on YouTube. Then we have Oslo and Kiev playing on Saturday. Sarajevo, New England. That'll be a good one. That won't be on YouTube. But there's only 2 games going up on YouTube. I'll talk about it in a second. But Sarajevo, New England's happening. Houston, Tombstone. San Francisco, Memphis. Helsinki, Warsaw. Stockholm, Madrid. That's going to be a pretty good one. Dublin, Wallerock. Berlin and Zurich. Nicosia and Lisbon. Paris and Dallas. Malmo and Atlanta. Springfield and Palermo. Lyon and Arisdale. Tampa and Denver. Los Angeles and Miami. And then St. Catherine and New Jerusalem on Monday. I will be broadcasting the Los Angeles Miami game for anyone curious on that one. So if you want to see a good divisional West matchup at 6 p.m. Mountain Time on Sunday, this Sunday, today's the 19th, so the 20th, 21st, 22nd, Sunday the 22nd at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, you will be able to see Los Angeles and Miami. Tune in. I'm going to be commentating, or maybe not me, but someone else, someone like me. Either way, that'll be live commentary. Eat Alpha Tier will be AI commentary. So just check into that game. All right, so that's all the weekly recap for this week. Tune in next week for the next weekly recap on Tuesday. That's it for this week's WFL Weekly Recap. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.